It's still Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In the next video, I'll go more in depth into the psychiatrist's story. But before I tell you that story, I need you to understand a little bit more about how the human brain works, because our brains are us. Here's what people don't understand about brains. Your brain is your operating system. It's not some separate mental health thing. Your brain is you. Your brain controls your nervous system. That's everything from your heartbeat to your breathing to how you move. All of it is run by your brain. When we talk about achieving something close to immortality for humans, we're talking about transferring our consciousness, the information stored in our brains, to a computer. We're not trying to upload our physical bodies. We're trying to upload our consciousness, the information from our brains. Our brains are who we are. In a chess game, you're the king. You have to protect the king at all costs. Your brain is the king, and we don't take this seriously enough. I've been reading neuroscience research papers for many years now. Because I'm a big giant nerd, I read neuroscience for funsies, so you don't have to. I've read well over 100 papers at this point on psychopathy, autism, on brain injuries, on genetics, on epigenetics, to name but a few. I've read all this, so you don't have to. Once I read Dr. Kent Keel's book, The Psychopath Whisperer, everything changed for me. I realized this isn't a psychology issue. It's a brain issue, a tissue issue. This isn't about just how we think. It's what we're made of. How is our brain literally shaped? How are the connections formed? How is it structured? How does genetics play into all this? When people act in ways that deviate from the norm, what is it in the structure or function of their brains and nervous systems that causes this or allows it to happen? I don't want to assume everyone has the same understanding of neurobiology, so let me take a moment and ground you in the science. There's a specific part of your brain, for my fellow nerds and scientists, that's called the parahippocampal place area. That plays a major role in recognizing places, where you are, what spaces look like. In a 2014 study by Mégevand, Megevand et al., during brain surgery, doctors touched this spot with a small electrical current. Patients started seeing incredibly detailed places. One person saw their neighborhood train station, another saw their eye doctor's office. One patient said everything looked Italian, like they were in a pizza shop with aprons and cooking equipment. These weren't just flashes of light. They were full, detailed scenes that their brains created from a tiny bit of electricity touching one spot. That's how specialized and precise some parts of our brains are. Most people look at someone who's done something terrible and ask, what was their childhood like? What kind of life did they have that they could do that? I never ask those questions. The question I ask is, what is their brain and nervous system like such that it allows them to do that? I remember reading a story about a prison riot where a couple of prisoners found a hammer and bludgeoned 2 people to death, like beat them to death with a hammer to their heads. My first thought wasn't about their childhoods. It was, my God, what are their brains like that they can do that? There's this really powerful scene in Mindhunter where Ed Kemper, played masterfully by Cameron Britton, is talking to the FBI agents. He's explaining how the first time he stabbed somebody, it was really hard. Like, you have to commit to it. You have to do it harder than you think. Most of these scenes were taken verbatim from Ed Kemper's actual interviews, by the way. Now, Ed Kemper had already killed his grandparents when he was 15. He was living with them at the time. That's called child-to-caregiver violence. It doesn't have to be biological parents to count as child-to-parent violence. I'll definitely be doing a whole video about Ed Kemper later because his story is really important for understanding all of this. But in this Mindhunter scene, he's talking about his first victim as the co-ed killer years after killing his grandparents. He's telling the FBI agents that even then, stabbing somebody was really, really hard. Later in the show, the FBI agents are at a bar with other law enforcement agents, and they're telling this story. They're laughing and laughing about how Ed Kemper went on and on about how hard it is to stab somebody. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, how do you not see what an amazing gift he just gave you? Here's what nobody talks about. This man, who had already killed his grandparents with a gun years earlier, who would go on to become a serial killer, he still had the impulse in him not to be violent. He still had that little bit of a thing that stops most of us from stabbing people. That safety brake that most of humanity has. He stepped over it and he decided to continue, but he still had it. Even Ed Kemper at that moment still had a remnant of what stops most of us from violence. It wasn't until after that moment that those brakes were gone that he became capable of stabbing people to death with no problem. He's telling the FBI agents about that process, about how he broke through the barrier. Most of us have never killed anything. We don't even slaughter our own food anymore. We rely on other people to do that. Then we go to the grocery store and our food just shows up. But Ed is basically giving them the answer to the test. He's holding up a sign saying, look, this is actually really, really hard. I had to push through something fundamental in my brain to be able to do this. And I'm so different that I was able to step over how hard this is and keep going. So, what kind of brain allows someone to commit to that? What kind of brain makes it possible to override that safety mechanism? Ed Kemper eventually killed his mother too. This is why parents like me don't got this. We can't got this. We don't got this. Some of us literally fucking die. If you study any neuroscience, the number one case everyone talks about is Phineas Gage. He was a railroad construction foreman. An iron rod, and when I first heard this story, I imagined it was something small, but this thing was 1.2 inches in diameter. It blasted right up behind his left eye and out the top of his head during an accident. Amazingly, dude never lost consciousness. After that, everyone said Gage was no longer Gage. He used to be conscientious, helpful, kind, went out of his way to help people. After the injury, he behaved exactly like someone with psychopathy. Neurologists originally named what Gage suffered from as pseudopsychopathy. It was later called acquired sociopathic personality. In other words, if you damage a particular part of your paralimbic system, you can acquire a psychopathic personality. That's actually one of the reasons we know about one of the parts of the brain that are implicated in psychopathy, because of what happened to Phineas Gage. Much of what we know about the brain comes from case studies like this. Someone somewhere has a particular part of their brain damaged and it changes their behavior. That's part of how we map the brain. There's a biological basis in certain parts of our brains that sometimes completely controls our behavior. Not just influences it, controls it. Speaking of brain health and treatment, I'm going to try to do as many of these videos as I can for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But I'm about to start a new medication that was prescribed by the doctors at the UCLA Brain Sport Clinic. It's a once monthly injection. I often have really bad reactions to medications, so if I suddenly disappear, it's probably because I didn't tolerate the headache medicine. And with an injection, if I have a bad reaction, it'll probably keep me down for at least a month. It's things like this that are why parents like me don't got this. We can't got this. We don't got this. Before we can talk about what traumatic brain injuries do to people, including parents experiencing child-to-parent violence, you need to understand that our brains are us. Damage to the brain is damage to who we are as people. The psychiatrist story, the one I'm telling next, makes a lot more sense when you understand that.